Sometimes pleading guilty before you've even been charged with a crime is the best way to go. I know that sounds crazy, so let me explain. It's called a pre-indictment plea. So if you find out that you're under investigation, you hire an attorney, the attorney reaches out to the U.S. attorney. This is in federal court. And the attorney says, my client would like to cooperate, or my client would like to come in and get this resolved pre-indictment. So what is an indictment? It's where a grand jury is assembled, 16 to 23 or 25 people, I never remember. And the U.S. attorney presents the evidence. Usually an agent testifies. They can ask questions. There is no defense in this situation. And the grand jury has to decide that you probably committed this offense. And then a document is produced which has the charges and it says indictment. If you plead guilty without an indictment, you have to waive your right or give up your right to have a grand jury decide if you probably committed this crime. And you plead guilty to a document called the information. So it looks exactly the same as the indictment, except it's called an information. It's just a different way of charging the same crimes. If you come in early, it's possible that a U.S. attorney will agree not to charge certain counts, like for instance, an identity theft count or a money laundering count, which can add significantly to your sentence. Because you've come in early, you've helped them, and you've potentially cooperated against other people who may have been involved in the crime. So you and your attorney go in, you meet with the prosecutor and the agents, you sit around a conference table at the U.S. attorney's office, it's very informal, and you talk about what happened. They ask you questions, or you can present a narrative. Generally, when you ask for the meeting, the U.S. attorney will say, why don't you go ahead and tell us what you want to tell us? Sometimes I will say, why don't you ask us questions? I think it's easier that way if we know that they have been investigating and they know a lot already. So you go in, tell them everything that you know about the offense, and then the U.S. attorney will produce an information, which is the charging document, and a plea agreement. And the plea agreement is based on the conversations that you've had, but more importantly, the investigation that they've already done. And hopefully it excludes a couple of the counts that maybe they could have charged if they went to the grand jury, but they want to be nice because you helped them and you came in early. And U.S. attorneys really appreciate that. They appreciate it when people take complete responsibility for their actions. They come in early. It saves them work. It saves them investigation. And so they usually are willing to give you something in exchange for that effort on your behalf. So this is a pre-indictment plea. So it means that generally speaking, you can walk into court for your initial appearance, you appear on the case, and sometimes, depending on the court, depending upon their procedures, you will have a second appearance, which is called a post-indictment arraignment. Even though you haven't been indicted, you're pleading not guilty to the information, at which time you're assigned a judge, you're given a trial date, which almost always gets continued to a later date so that you have time to work on the case. And then you schedule a change of plea date. But the plea is filed, the plea agreement is filed at the same time as the information. So the court knows when you show up for your post-indictment arraignment that you've already signed a plea agreement and that this is just going to move forward very quickly. Now, whether or not sentencing happens quickly is a whole other story. That depends upon whether you're cooperating, whether there's a reason to continue, whether they're investigating other people that may be involved so that you can get cooperation credit. That varies greatly. The main thing is that you have come in early, you've potentially cooperated or not, you're pleading guilty by way of an information instead of an indictment. And generally speaking, that is a much better way to go. You are not going to have to wait to get arrested. You usually can just walk into court with your lawyer. They will send a summons to your lawyer. The lawyer will respond and say, hey, we have to be in court on such and such a date. You show up and you get it done. And you agree to being left out of custody during the proceedings. So you don't have to worry that you're going to have to go into custody at some point. You're going to stay out, hopefully, until you self-surrender if you have to serve a prison sentence. So that is what a pre-plea or pre-indictment plea is in federal court.